The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals is a horror comedy musical produced by StarKid, the same group who you probably know as the guys who made the fan-made Harry Potter musicals. The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals is not only my favorite StarKid show, but was also the first one I saw, because I don't know about you, but if I see a video titled The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals Songs Ranked, I click on that. These ranking videos are a super fun way to engage with the show and other fans. Perhaps I'll throw my own ranking video into this review later. After watching enough ranking videos, you eventually just watch the real show, and it's a fun show as we follow a guy who doesn't like musicals find himself in a hellish real-world musical brought on by evil aliens. The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals acts as the first in a series of musicals detailing the horrors of a town called Hatchetfield, and while its sequel, Black Friday, which I've already talked about in a different video, has already expanded the lore and mysteries of the series a lot, there's something nice about coming back to these humble beginnings. No big mystery to solve, no loose ends to come back to in further shows. Even though it's the first of the Hatchetfield series, The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals also acts as a very fun, standalone musical. And for this review, I'm going to spoil it, so if that all sounds like something you're interested in, go give the show a watch and come back once you're done. It's available on YouTube, totally free, and I'll even have a link to the show in my description for you. And with the short summary and spoiler warning out of the way, the video can really begin. The show opens with the title song, The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, and this is such a perfect way to pull in your audience. The song's catchy and funny, while also detailing a breakdown of the situation with Paul and Hatchetfield before the meteor crashes. There are so many excellent moments within the song that I'd like to highlight for you, but I also don't want to show off too much of the show, just in case you'd still like to watch it after the review. But I think the thing that most perfectly demonstrates not only the vibe of the song, but of the show as a whole, is the sinister dabbing section.
Should we kill him? Should we kill him?
It's funny and silly and really gets you excited to see more, which is good because the following scene does basically none of that at all. I understand that the idea is to make Paul's job and life seem boring, but it's not funny, and they keep kinda talking like they're saying a joke, but nothing ever actually is a joke.
Just remember, you want to print from the HP laser jet? Not the HP inkjet.
Right. Sorry, Paul.
It's fine.
And the whole scene spends more time establishing Paul's co-workers than him, which on one hand, it's nice to set up Charlotte's struggling marriage, Bill's strained relationship with his daughter, and Ted being a jerk nice and early, but on the other hand, I find myself wishing we were getting a little more info on our protagonist than just, he doesn't like musicals. Which ends up continuing into the next scene where our focus is put onto Emma, the other main character of the show. Emma works at a Starbucks knockoff called Beanies that offers a song in exchange for a tip, but Emma doesn't like singing for customers.
You know what? I'm never coming back here again. That sign's bullshit!
Oh my god, so mean!
While this scene is funnier than the one at the office, I can't help but feel our main characters come off as sort of dickheads for these opening moments of the show.
It sucked, right?
Yeah, they shouldn't call it God's spell, more like God awful.
Yeah, or like, goddamn, that was bad.
Yeah!
Honestly, other than Bill, the whole cast has been pretty unlikable to a degree so far, which I suppose is good for a show that sees everybody dead by the end of it, but doesn't inspire me to get invested. If it weren't for that opening number, I would have clicked away from the video by now, due to just nobody seeming that likable. A problem that continues as Paul leaves the shop and bumps into an environmentalist looking for donations.
It goes to line the pockets of some corporate bigwigs. I give my money directly to the people who need it.
Oh, spare change for the homeless?
Sorry, I don't have any.
And perhaps the more damning part of this oddly abrasive beginning is that, even worse than everyone being a bit of a jerk, is that the show's not all that funny for the first 15 minutes or so. Some jokes do land, of course.
And I still haven't gotten my hot chocolate.
Oh, sorry, I'll get right on that.
I have very low blood sugar.
But for the most part, the show seems more interested in touting ideologies about corporations and minimum wage. And it's all stuff I agree with, but it ends up feeling more like a lecture than a horror or comedy. The tone of the show is really different before the meteor crashes and the hive begin to take over, and again I find myself split on how I feel about that. I think it's good to have the normal real world be less fun and energetic than the horrific musical that the characters find themselves in. But I also still wish that I liked this world before it became a musical, you know? As the meteor begins its descent to Hatchetfield, we get a roll call on all the important characters for the show, laying down what they're up to when it hits the theater and how they feel about the ominous asteroid. I really like this. There's a lot of characters that don't get a whole lot of screen time, all being played by the same small handful of cast members, so establishing what they look like and sound like in quick succession like this is a good way to get a grasp on who we should be looking out for. Also, real quick side note, but the Smoke Club is perhaps the funniest part of the show before the music gets to start. It's at this point that I'd also like to talk about the lack of music for the beginning of the show. As should be expected, there are no songs performed before the world becomes a musical. This is a pretty obvious thing to do, but I do want to point out that they did not fuck that up, which is good. But moreover, there's no backing music. The scenes feel really quiet because it's just talking. There's no jingles to signify scene transitions.
Hi, can I talk to you about saving the planet? I don't need to see it, thank you.
There is no music before the meteor hits, and the first notes we hear are with Professor Higgins as he activates his Alexa. And as the professor accosts the meteor, the background music finally starts, still in the same range as the Alexa jingle, so it's real subtle, but it is there.
Alexa! It's happening! Come on, you bastard! You don't think I'm ready for you? I've been waiting in the wings!
The hive has begun to take effect, and how fitting that it makes its first appearance with the only person who ends up joining the hive willingly. Paul begins his next day and heads off to work, where he quickly runs into his first musical number, La-Dee-Da-Da-Day. While I don't love the opening scenes much, I'm glad that the showrunners really waste no time getting to the musical part of the story. Less than 20 minutes into the show and everything starts kicking off, which is good. Regardless of the context of musicals in the show, we, the audience, have still come to watch a musical, and I see no good reason to wander around the plot when it all becomes much more exciting and fun once the meteor hits. And La-Dee-Da-Da-Day is a great segue into that. It's funky and punchy and upbeat. Paul may not like it, but we get to have unabashed fun with the song.
So I throw my worries and my old skin away, doing what I want to on this la-di-da day.
Not only does the song slap, but also getting to watch Paul panic is funny, even though the Hive members become quite dastardly later. For now, it's still comedy forward and lighthearted, which is a nice way to ease us into the music. I love Paul trying to crawl away here. Also, a fun thing to keep in mind is that those who aren't part of the Hive can't hear the backing music, which is a cool thing to keep in mind as later our heroes end up talking over the songs because they don't know how the music is going. It's a cool detail, but it does have its downsides, which I'll explain more later on. Paul makes it to the office where his coworkers are still unaware of the music-based threat, as they're all wrapped up in their own personal dramas. Paul tries to explain the situation, but before he can really start to explore the new music phenomenon with Charlotte, whose husband was also singing La-Dee-Da-Da-Day in the shower, Paul gets called to his boss's office. Paul's worried he's going to get in trouble for forgetting to do a task given to him the previous day, but it seems Mr. Davidson has something else in mind.
What do you want, Paul?
Excuse me?
Mr. Davidson starts singing What Do You Want, Paul?, a hilarious subversion of the classic I Want songs musicals have. If you've seen any Disney musical, then you understand what an I Want song is. It's literally laying out what the protagonist of the show wants, the goal they'll be striving for during the show. And so having Mr. Davidson try to prompt Paul, which the Hives seem to know is our protagonist, into starting an I Want song is just chef's kiss.
What's that one concrete goal that motivates all your action?
I don't think I have one of those.
Well, then how's anyone supposed to sympathize with you, Paul?
I don't really love Jeff's singing here. I've talked about his falsetto more extensively in the Black Friday review I did, and I explained that I think this song is his most egregious use of it. He gets sharp, which blows, cause I know Jeff is a good singer. But while I feel the song could be better, the comedy of the piece has no such issue, as What Do You Want, Paul might just be the funniest song of the show.
Do you know what I want for myself? Okay.
Paul escapes to Beanie's, where Emma's boss has been weirdly strict on having a bunch of singing done in the shop. Paul tries to explain the situation to Emma, but...
Okay, now! Are you frightened?
doesn't do a great job. This whole scene is actually real funny. While I hadn't liked Emma much in her first appearance, her abrasive personality works wonderfully here and for the rest of the show, as her snarky remarks gets to bounce off Paul's nervous demeanor really well. Seeing the way these two react to the sudden outbreaks of song is part of the fun because of how scared Paul is and how apathetic Emma is. Emma has to do a whole song and dance with her coworkers for a tip in the 3 cup of roasted coffee, a short little ditty which works well with its almost immediate evil reprise following it. Despite only being about a minute long, it really sticks in your head since it's playing off the vibe of old school jingles.
Hey, Mr. Business, how do you do?
I especially like the brass fanfare in the beginning. Finally fed up with beanies, Emma quits, but the other baristas won't let her leave. The patrons all double over coughing, and Emma finds that their coffee's been poisoned, which leads into the aptly named cup of poisoned coffee.
Get your cup of poison coffee. What is this?
Now that the song has taken an ominous turn, our heroes flee. I really like this escalation. We go from quirky, harmless singing that Paul doesn't like, to a real threat with the poison blue shit that the Hive produces. Like I said earlier, Paul doesn't like the music, but the viewers have so far. We've enjoyed the singing and dancing without any of the worry that Paul has. Now that it's established that these musical baddies effectively kill and brainwash others to force them to sing, we have a real conflict on our hands. Making the first handful of songs comedy forward is a great way to slowly set up the threat and ease the audience into the real danger of the show. Great stuff. Paul and Emma escape and have one of the greatest fourth wall breaking gags I've ever seen as they make their way through the audience, commenting on how the alleyway they've escaped through is really narrow.
Whose decision was it to line an alleyway with tons of shrubs?
After getting to a more open area, the heroes freak out a bit before Paul's coworkers rejoin the party.
It's all downtown. We were just at Beanie's. Ah! You didn't invite me! Jesus, Ted!
This whole scene is hilarious. Charlotte's husband, Sam, appears in his squad car, but it looks like he's not too well either as he and his two companions start singing Show Me Your Hands. It's a cute, jazzy song that still keeps the more fun, comedy-forward vibe as the other songs so far, but now the heroes get to react appropriately frightened by the singing, though the goofy over-the-top feel of the cops helps keep the audience still effectively on the Hive's side.
Step away from the vehicle. Step away from the vehicle. Get back in the vehicle. Get back in the vehicle. Slowly get out of the vehicle. Slowly get out of the vehicle.
It's not until Sam pulls his gun out that there seems to be any real danger here, which luckily doesn't last long as Ted clocks Sam in the head. I think this is as good a time as any to talk about the costume design for the show. It's fine. There's no real color theme for the show and no other hidden meanings to interpret from how the characters look. It's not bad. Everyone does effectively convey their job and basic personality. Instead, the main focus of the costumes was simply to separate characters. There are only 8 actors portraying 39 characters between them. And don't get me wrong, they do a great job distinguishing between all these different people they have to play. It just ends up resulting in a nothing too special to look at collection of costumes. Back to the play, Sam doesn't look too good.
Oh my god! His brain fell out!
And Emma explains that she has a kooky science professor who lives in a weird lockdown doomsday prepper house who would let them hide with him. The gang heads off to his place and we get properly introduced to the most entertaining character of the show, Professor Higgins.
Who is it?
Professor Higgins!
Don't lie to me, whoever you are. I'm Professor Higgins.
The professor is a fan favorite, and it's not hard to see why. Being so eccentric means he gets some of the funniest lines in the show, and is like a beacon of silliness amongst the relatively dour hero team. And even though Higgins does end up alerting the Hive to their location, believing that the aliens could bring world peace, I don't see him as a villain. He's misguided. His actions have the best intentions, and while not explicitly on the good guy's side, I think he plays the pivotal role of a third party in the story. Not a hero, not a villain, but somewhere in the middle, where he does some of the most important things to help push the story along. Higgins examines Sam's weird blue brain and concludes that aliens brought to Earth via the meteor are what has Hatchetfield singing and dancing.
What on earth does that look like to you?
God, I don't know, some kind of blue shit?
Exactly, Emma! What the fuck is this shit?
The majority of the group head off to have a drink while Ted and Charlotte stay back with Sam. Ted, who Charlotte is cheating on Sam with, wants to fuck, but she's not into it, so Ted follows the others. Quick side note, this cheating plot point goes just Nowhere. Charlotte and Sam's relationship was immediately established as strained with his skipping their cuddle night. Both are also cheating on their partners, and then nothing else happens. Like, the song that's about to start hinges on Charlotte wanting Sam to still love her, leading to her also getting taken over by the Hive. But like, I don't know, why establish this complex web of cheating just for it to do nothing? Either way, like mentioned, Sam starts to sing Tied Up My Heart, and I wish I liked this song more than I do. I dig this sort of 80s rock love ballad vibe, but I also think the song's just kinda boring.
You tied up my heart, you tied me down. Now break me open with your love and mercy.
It's 3.5 minutes of just the same thing happening over and over. Charlotte is worried because Sam is singing. He seduces her a bit, she remembers she should be worried, he continues to seduce her, etc. I just don't think it needed to be this long, especially with the pretty boring visuals, as there's not even the usual fun dancing accompanying the song that other pieces get. While choking on the poison coffee did a good job establishing a real threat, that threat level rises significantly as Sam tears into Charlotte's guts at the end of the song. Suddenly the songs aren't quite all fun and games anymore, and the show gets to start adopting a more serious horror tone. Again, this is nice. The escalation of conflict throughout the show is solid, never going too fast, allowing for the perfect sense of rising fear in regards to the Hive. It's just really great. Elsewhere in Higgins' estate, tensions are rising as the stress of the situation starts to take a toll on the group.
I'm gonna kick your head.
Oh. My head.
Yeah.
Not my ass.
Yeah.
As the argument subsides, Paul and Emma have a heart-to-heart about growing up and how Emma's sister died and what they would have wanted to do in life. It's a nice, quiet scene, needed not only to recenter the audience before everything kicks off, but also to help us understand our leads better as they, in turn, grow closer. While not devoid of comedy, the scene focuses much more on honesty than getting laughs, and it's really nice. Side note though, I do wish Bill and Ted were more clearly distanced from Paul and Emma. The filming of the scene helps, as the other guys aren't in frame, but I am aware that they are just over there a little bit, stage left, you know? Unfortunately, the nice vibes don't get to last as Sam and Charlotte reappear, singing Join Us and Die. With Charlotte's guts hanging out of her shirt and covered in the same blue shit that Sam's exposed brain was drenched in, the Hive has fully established itself as something to be feared. The songs aren't meant to be fun anymore. When watching all the ranking videos that got me invested in StarKid in the first place, I also saw a decent number of videos along the lines of best part of every song from the guy who didn't like musicals, and for Join Us and Die, they always pick Jamie's long belt at the beginning of the song. And like, I get it, it's impressive and cool, but personally, I think the best part is the chorus, where the show decides to crank up its horror levels.
Join us and die. Charlotte. Join us and die. Join us and die. All you gotta do is.
This is also where I'd like to bring up the fact that Paul and Emma can't hear the backing music again. Usually their little commentaries during songs is fine, but here it's just sorta dumb.
What's wrong with them?
What's wrong with them? Like Emma, they're fucking explaining how they're aliens who intend to kill you right now. She also, like, seems confused as to what Charlotte's doing. Like, her guts are hanging out of her dude, she's fucking dead. It just makes the moment so goofy, which I don't think was the intention. Higgins busts in to give the song one of the coolest endings. He then gets the group to sing to prove they aren't part of the Hive, and soon afterwards, Bill gets a call from his daughter, Alice.
Alice. Oh, thank God, I've never been more happy in my life. Your mother left me and moved you to Clydesdale.
We get it. Bill's divorced. This sort of clunky exposition type of line was fine for his first scene. You gotta establish this shit somehow.
See, I got Alice for one more night before she goes home to Clydesdale. Her mother, just to make me look small, took her all the way to New York to see Hamilton.
But in practically every scene he's in, they have Bill mention, I'm divorced, my wife left me, I don't get to live with my daughter. Like, yeah, we got it. Lines like this sound so unnatural and clunky. The teen is with her girlfriend, Deb, but Deb's started singing suddenly. Bill instructs her to stay away from Deb and says he'll come find her. As he prepares to leave, Ted starts accosting the man, laying out how it's useless and how his daughter is all but dead already. Paul is the one who stops the argument, promising to go with Bill to help him. You'll notice that I didn't play a clip from this scene here. It's because it's the best serious moment of the show. The writing and acting are all in perfect form, and if you want to see any of it, then I think you should see the whole sequence, because it would just be wrong to cut it up. This scene is one of the things that elevates this play from good to great, and it comes to a close with the end of Act 1. The first act is pretty jam-packed, running the gambit of normal life to aliens ripping out guts. It's got funny moments and serious moments, with the events of the afternoon flying at a rapid pace. Songs are separated by a couple minutes-long scenes that mostly just see the cast go to a new location. And I'm impressed that the show so far doesn't feel rushed despite the breakneck pace. Other than You Tied Up My Heart, we never take too long to get to the next interesting plot point, while still making sure there's plenty of time to breathe and react to events as they happen. And even with tons of songs, threat escalation, relationship building, and character development, we still make sure to properly set up what the plan is for Act 2. The group has to separate as Bill and Paul head off to find Alice, and the others stay with the professor to study the hive. We want everyone to make it. Well, maybe not Ted. And they are at their most vulnerable as Act 2 starts up, meaning we get to come back in after the intermission already fully invested. Act 2 starts up with the guys sneaking through town trying to find Alice. Things of note include Paul entering his best form of costuming with his sleeves rolled up. Fellows, pay attention. This is always good. I am giving you important advice here. Roll up your sleeves, honey. And on a more serious note, we get a little more info on why Bill doesn't like his daughter's girlfriend, since he thinks she's a bad influence.
So I said, why don't you try dating someone like Grace Chastity? And she goes, no, Grace Chastity is a nerdy prude.
I like that the fact that Alice is in a same-sex relationship isn't a factor in Bill wanting her to be with a partner who maybe doesn't smoke weed. It's just some nice LGBTQ+ rep without making a big deal about it. It's cool. They find Alice, and why is she wearing a different outfit now? When we saw her before the meteor hit, she was wearing a totally different ensemble. No one else changed across the days, except Charlotte, who donned a different sweater. Which was also weird. Like, I don't know, I want to say maybe this is representing the influence of Deb and her smoke club friends, but there's also just, like, nothing to support that. This outfit is also way less cute than her first one, but whatever, I guess. Alice, Deb, and Smoker Girl quickly start up Not Your Seed, and I'm gonna say something controversial here. I don't think this song is that good. Now let me explain. Mariah Rose Faith's singing is really amazing.
Look what happens, nightmare time.
Honestly, the whole cast does a stellar job with their vocal performances. The problem is, Mariah singing well doesn't mean the song is good. It's all over the place, constantly changing tempo and melody, and overall seems aimless. Not to mention, it feels cheap too. Every other song has been an attempt to get the heroes to join the hive, but Not Your Seed just tries to make Bill sad.
Why does it hurt to love you? Why am I in pain?
It's a cheap tactic to tug at your heartstrings, and yeah, I feel bad for Bill as his daughter sings about how he continually fucked up, but I can also acknowledge that they could have done this with a less overtly manipulative song, or at least one that felt cohesive. And again, Bill does this Dumbo, I'll just keep trying to talk to her, even though joining the hive has clearly been established as not reversible by this point. I feel like I'm being awful hard on the scene, and I think it's just because I've seen a lot of people ignore these issues when discussing The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. Mariah has a lot of fans and they're excited for her song here, and that's fine. I don't even think it's a bad sequence of events, but I do think its flaws are worth mentioning. With his daughter effectively dead, Bill contemplates suicide, but Paul talks him out of it. Unfortunately, that doesn't matter much as Alice and her friends get the gun instead. Bill's death doesn't really get to sit with us much though, as the hive struggles to speak in unison.
We have traveled across seas of stars, bounding.
A part of me thinks Bill's death should have been given more weight, but then another part of me thinks this gag with the hive is too funny to miss out on. Bonus fact, this not being able to talk in unison gag was created because the actresses were actually struggling to get the lines right for the scene, and they ran with that. Things seem dire for Paul, but luckily the army show up in time to save him.
Get down on the ground or the army! Bam, bam, get out of here! Bam, bam!
As he gets sedated, we cut back to Emma and Professor Higgins as they make a discovery about the aliens, that they share a hive mind. Higgins starts to convince himself that the apotheosis into the hive would achieve world peace, which I suppose he's technically right, but everyone would also be dead and puppeted by a hive mind, so Not great. Deciding that he can't trust Emma to work with him, he gives her a sedative to knock her unconscious. Minor thing, I love that since Robert Mannion playing Higgins couldn't get the syringe back into his pocket, he just threw it off stage. Nice way to think on your feet. Back with Paul, we get introduced to General McNamara, a now recurring character in the Hatchetfield series, and I gotta say, he's a lot weirder in this show.
We're all a little shocked to find a survivor like yourself. But I got some bad news for you, Paul. My unit was sent to make a clean sweep of what was once your down. No loose ends, no survivors.
Whoa, so you're just gonna kill me?
Those are my orders, yes. 2 in the head, 1 in the heart.
If Black Friday was your first experience with the Hatchetfield series, you'd be used to McNamara as the gruff, tough badass.
Sorry for the intrusion, Mr. President. Hope you don't mind if I let myself in.
Into the Oval Office?
But while he was confidently leading his team and running around alternate dimensions to save people there, his first appearance here in The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals sees McNamara more like a kooky conspiracy nut, more interested in explaining his deep understanding of love and the strength of the human heart than saving the day. I'm not too bothered by this, but I do hope that future Star Kid shows sees McNamara solidify a bit, that they can make both versions of him seen so far feel connected. Either that, or that he just seems like a totally different character wearing the same face and name each show. I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. Back at the professor's place, Emma and Ted wake up tied to some chairs, and no joke, this is the best scene of the whole show. While I do love the scene that ends Act 1, this moment is damn near perfect. It's hilarious.
This is humanity's 11th hour.
It pushes the plot forward so much as Higgins decides to draw the aliens in by singing. We get some amazing characterization with Higgins trying to get his Alexa to self-destruct. Tensions get jacked as the professor loses it. It's just fun. It's engrossing and a delight all the way through. Professor Higgins then starts to sing Show-Stopping Number, hands down the most popular song from the show within the community. It's bombastic, catchy, funny, and Robert has an amazing range.
It all unifies humanity in a thundering chorus.
And I'm gonna say something else controversial here. I think it's overhyped. And don't get me wrong, I think the song's great. I like it a lot, it being one that I'll listen to casually, but like, it's also not the best in the show. It pauses a lot for Higgins to explain his history with musical theater, and again for the extended phone call gag, and I think these pauses, while funny enough, really hurt the pacing of the song. The phone call especially takes just a bit too much time in my opinion, and really, I think the only reason people love the song as much as they do is because they've got a crush on Robert Mannion. While still a complete delight, Show-Stopping Number wouldn't be #1 on so many people's ranking videos if someone else was singing it. This also seems like the perfect time to give a huge shout out to the band doing all the music here. They're totally killing it and help to elevate all the songs to the level of hype and emotion they deserve.
Show-stopping number, a real showstopper, an aria.
I know the onstage performers get tons of love for their work, and they deserve it, but the pit deserves so much love for their work too. Great job, guys. Back to the show, I do really like how fun the scene and song is despite the dire implications.
Business calls, I'm up to my ass in shit.
We're nearing the end of the show, and this gets to be the last big moment of jocularity before shit starts really hitting the fan. It helps to keep the show from being too much of a downer. The Hive appears, taking the form of Higgins' old college friends, and every time I watch the show, I'm distracted by this audience member who sounds like a duck when they react to this. The boys sing a bit more and run off just in time for Paul to reappear and save Ted and Emma. They then have the best joke of the whole show and the smartest way to strike the set.
Shh, we gotta get out of here while they're distracted.
Oh my god, should I take this chair?
Yes, I'll get the piano.
As Higgins meets a terrible fate. Paul explains that they need to hurry to the place where McNamara's helicopter will come pick them up. Ted laments how much of an asshole he's been, but once the Hive reappears and grabs Paul, Ted takes the gun and runs. He bumps into the military and starts to celebrate his safety, and then the coolest use of the lights happens.
Number 2, I bleed red, white, and blue.
This minimal set and its use of lighting is really cool throughout the show. The tone is always clear. They get creative with it to represent things like the TV or the flashing police lights. The cast goes through a ton of different locations, and choosing to represent those with small props like chairs rather than a full set change is brilliant. This set was an amazing decision with perfect execution, 10 out of 10. It looks like McNamara has fallen to the hive as he in turn inducts Ted, and I gotta say, the apotheosis is like weirdly inconsistent on how it's done. Sometimes it's with blue shit, sometimes they just tear your guts out. Here, McNamara shines a light into Ted's mouth, and later Higgins will mention spores. I don't know, it just feels like there's no rules on how this really works, which isn't really a big deal. The idea always comes across. I guess it's just that once you watch the show enough times, you start to notice this sort of thing. McNamara and the others start to sing America is Great Again, a song that probably wants to be making more of a political statement than it really gets to.
America's great again.
This show ran in 2018, and the phrasing of the title here shouldn't be lost on anyone in the States that's old enough to be watching my videos. Being mostly a transitionary song, there's no real time to dwell on any deep message in its lyrics, but I also don't know how deep a message they could have offered anyway. It wasn't much of a secret how great things were then. Beyond all that, the song it's fine. It doesn't have a lot going on, not bad by any means, it's just tough to follow show-stopping number, you know? And what makes it harder to engage with America is Great Again is the fact that this is the most egregious example of Paul and Emma jabber-jawing throughout the song. They just keep waffling around, meant to be panicking but not able to actually escape until the song finishes. I also wish we had gotten to see how Emma saved Paul from Greg earlier, but I suppose we can live without that answer for the sake of pacing. Emma gets the gun and shoots McNamara, saving Paul, and the two make it to the helicopter.
Emma! Seatbelts! It's a little bumpy!
They celebrate, but not for long, as it's revealed that the helicopter pilot is part of the Hive too.
Hey, Mr. Business, how do you do? Zoe?
Oh, it's Zoe, Emma's coworker. Why? Like, why not just have it be a different person? They're a hive mind. More than just Zoe could have sung a bit of Cup of Roasted Coffee here. I don't get this. Regardless, the helicopter crashes.
Emma, I hate to say this right now, but this is what seatbelts are for.
Shit.
No longer able to walk, Emma instructs Paul that he has to destroy the meteor to stop the hive at the source. The two share a really excellent, tender moment. That honestly is a better representation of their relationship than a kiss would have been, and Paul heads off to the Starlight Theater where the meteor landed. There's a small musical moment repeating the bridge from The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals number as the hive awaits their title character's approach.
The star of the show, let him come.
Paul enters, and by the way, blue lights for this scene is great, since they've established that the hive's shit is consistently blue. Good job. Before Paul has the time to deploy one of his grenades, though, Bill and Ted appear.
Watch out, Paul. He might kick your head.
As more Hatchetfield citizens file in, including Emma's boss, the Greenpeace girl, Mr. Davidson, and Professor Higgins, Paul stands his ground. Confidence won't be enough to save him, though, as Higgins explains that his proximity to the meteor has already begun the apotheosis for him, and they start to sing my favorite song from the show. Let It Out is the climax of the show and the culmination of Paul's character as he has to fight his own body as it begins to join in the song. It's dramatic, with Paul's first sung note of the show honestly making my heart race every time I hear it. Never! As the song progresses, Paul becomes more and more desperate until we reach the bridge, where he details how sad his life truly is.
I've never been happy.
He confronts his hatred of musicals and questions if he'd be happier if he embraced them. It's hard to tell if this is Paul genuinely opening up, or the hive taking its toll on his psyche. The song continues to build as Paul grapples with his identity.
God help me out.
And it all coalesces into this moment.
I don't like musicals!
What an amazingly satisfying climax to the show. The final confrontation is in song, but not with some hokey dance battle, but with an inner conflict within Paul. Watching our hero have to physically and mentally fight himself is gripping, and I have to say, Let It Out gets shafted on all those people's ranking videos. It's not flashy, but it's still powerful, moving, and deeply rooted in the story and characters. I love how this show handles the conclusion to its main conflict, and if you pay attention, when the song begins, we see Paul react as he hears the music for the first time. Lord, I love this so fucking much. As the dust settles from the explosion, we fade back over to Emma, now safe in Clydesdale 2 weeks later, as she was saved by the not-singing members of McNamara's team, Peep. Emma is given a new name as she needs to go into hiding to keep the Hive's attack a secret. Emma is upset that there were no survivors from the recent events in Hatchetfield, and Colonel Schaefer introduces her to Ben Bridges.
Oh, I don't know any Ben Bridges.
Well, according to our records, you two are very good friends.
Oh my god!
It looks like we get to have the happy ending we all wanted. And then this happens.
I'm sorry you lost.
Huh?
And it's at this point I'd like to interrupt this review to do that song ranking I promised earlier. Ranking the guy who didn't like musical songs from worst to best based on my opinion. Number 14, Let 'Em Come. Not really a song, more just a transition. It's only in the ranking because it's listed on the soundtrack. Number 13, Tied Up My Heart. Too long for its own good, and I kinda wish Jeff's vocals were more powerful. Number 12, America is Great Again. Short, monotone, and has too much of Paul and Emma talking over it. Impactful beginning, though. Number 11, What Do You Want, Paul? Hilarious, even though it might have the weakest vocals of the show. Still gets stuck in my head, though. Number 10, Not Your Seed. Unfocused and makes no sense in regards to how the Hive usually behave. Sorry, Mariah's great voice doesn't save it for me. Number 9, Join Us and Die. Powerful, impressive vocals that jacks up the horror while still being very funny. Number 8, Show Me Your Hands. Another hilarious song, complete with radical dancing and being a total earworm. Number 7 and number 6, Cup of Roasted Coffee and Cup of Poison Coffee. Getting lumped together cause they're the same song. Personally, I would have just fused them together and made them 2 different verses for one song, but whatever. Another super catchy fun song that really stands out with its unique sound. Number 5, La-Di-Da-Da-Day, another one that gets stuck in your head and a way better use of Mariah's stellar vocals. A super fun introduction to the Hive with some great dancing to boot. Number 4, Show-Stopping Number, super fun with top-level singing, dancing, and backing music. Unfortunately, it keeps stopping too much. Number 3, Let It Out, I think I've explained why this song rules so much enough. Number 2, The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. This song alone was enough to convince me to watch the whole show. Everyone's singing and dancing gets put on display, it's some of the funniest stuff in the show, all while masterfully expositing the important info needed to start the story. Number 1, Inevitable. This song that Paul starts to sing here is hands down the best piece of the whole show and helps to create one of the most impactful conclusions to a story I've ever seen. As the rest of the cast file in, Paul continues to sing a simultaneously radical and, in a way, due to the context, horrific song.
What if I told you a story that settled all the dust? I'm still the man you trust.
And then they start going through the show's soundtrack.
It's inevitable to know what I want now.
Know what you want now.
And I want you to join the party. Are you going to tempt me? Get your cup of coffee.
Inevitable remixes all of the major numbers of the show throughout it. It's so impactful as the music pulls you back through the whole story while Emma panics, all culminating in the most hype thing.
If you just give us one last
Show-stopping number with Emma front and center. A big one is inevitable.
This moment is the biggest reason I value Show-Stopping Number, that it can come back for this amazingly bombastic conclusion to the show. It seems Emma and the rest of the world is doomed as the musical ends.
The apotheosis is upon!
It's a fascinatingly bittersweet conclusion. The song is so fun, so energetic, and yet Paul's sacrifice was in vain. He died. Emma dies. It leaves you feeling kinda weird, but I think that's a good thing. The show stays with you after you leave the theater or finish the video. The fact that this ending is so conflicting not only leaves an impact on the viewer, but is a testament to how much the story and characters mattered to you. I mean, there's a reason why so many fans choose to believe Paul is only pretending to be part of the Hive in a bid to keep him and Emma safe. Over the course of this play, we began to care about these people. Even with them being sort of dickheads at the beginning of the show, even with them not doing much beyond panicking for most of the play, they mattered to us. And I think that's a testament not only to the stellar writing and directing of The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, but also to the performances of the actors as well. everyone did an amazing job for this show, and it fully deserves all the awards it's won. Like I said at the beginning of this video, The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals is my favorite Star Kid show. While I'm invested in the deeper story established in Black Friday, I can't help but appreciate how self-contained The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals is. It's nearly 18 minutes shorter than Black Friday, and yet is much more cohesive and well-structured and paced, with deeper characters that make a bigger impact on the viewer. The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals wasn't preoccupied with trying to set up future shows in the middle of its story. It was focused on telling its story. I do think I should acknowledge that it's a horror only in concept. It never really gets all that scary, being even less horrific than its sequel, but personally I think it balances its serious moments and its comedy really well. The showrunners know when to keep a joke and when to just let things be quiet. It takes you on a real roller coaster of emotions, even if very little of that coaster is actually scary. While one could be disappointed that, without any mention of Webby, the Black and White, Wiggly, or really anything important seen in its sequel, The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals ends up feeling pretty separated from the rest of the foreseeable shows to come in its series that it pioneers. But I think I like it that way. The deep, intertwined narrative we can expect to find in Hatchetfield could be great, but The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals is also great without being so intrinsically connected to it. This is an amazing show with phenomenal music, performances, comedy, lighting, damn near basically everything that goes into a show. I fully recommend you watch it, even if you've allowed yourself to be spoiled by my video. I guess the only thing left to say is, Hamilton better move over, 'cause the apotheosis is upon us.